If we say somebody has good judgment, we consider that a positive attribute. If somebody is called judgmental, it's considered a negative attribute. So the difference between having good judgment and being judgmental is often a matter of semantics. How do we use the term? How is it usually used in discourse? And most of the words that we use are variable to one degree or another. Getting down to the bottom of the intention of the word or what a person says is what really matters. For example, being judgmental in the case where you're judging somebody who is very suspicious in a situation that is dangerous may be a good thing. Judging somebody based on just the color of their skin or, the color of their hair, or maybe you're afraid of gingers, whatever it may be, it's not always warranted. However, this is circumstantial. If I were to say most people are honest, good people, hardworking people that want to do good by their community and by their families, whether or not you agree with that is going to be strongly dependent on where you grew up, what nationality you are, what your family life is like, whether or not you have friends or people you can trust. And to give you an example, if you'd grown up in a very close commune where everyone pulled their weight, everyone did their part, everyone was kind, perhaps not a commune, but a small community, what I would think of as a small town where the neighbors know each other but go about their own lives and leave each other alone, but spend time together and know each other by name. In a situation like this, you may have no crime. All the citizens may be fine and well off enough to where they don't need to steal from each other and have no reason to do so even if they are poor. There are some places where the communities are extremely poor, yet the crime rates are very low, whether it be because there's not a lot of teenagers or just because the people pack a shotgun every time they go to the mailbox. Whatever it may be, there are places where the communities generally take care of each other. And if you ask somebody from that community who had never left, and let's just eliminate the internet for a minute, because I need to look at this from the perspective of when I was a kid, okay? I grew up in the 80s. We did not have the internet. All we saw was on TV. And if you wanted to know what was going on somewhere in the rest of the world, it was just tough shit. You had to wait for a newscast to talk about it. Or you had to find a newspaper talking about it. You couldn't look it up. Or you had to go to the damn library and go use the Dewey Decimal System to look it up, and that's what we were raised on. And that's not to be nostalgic, but to point out that at that point, you'd be hard pressed to know what the world's really like outside of your little bubble. And even growing up in the suburbs of the Portland area, Milwaukee, Oregon City, Hillsboro, all these places that I moved to, they were big towns and near a large city, but not. We had neighbor kids, we had neighborhoods, we generally the places where I lived were safe. But I was introduced to crime as I got older, of course. Not only did I steal from some people when I was just a punk teenager, or shoplift from stores, forbid, things I didn't need, but just for the excitement and the rush, which is often why people, commit a lot of criminal acts. Sometimes it's just for the rush, not because they need anything. But that's another story altogether. Getting off track, but if you were born in a small town where there was little crime, you may think that the world is honest. If you grew up in the inner city in a place where you can't even leave your damn, kid's trike out in the front yard for 5 minutes without it getting stolen, then you're going to assume that most people are crooked and thieves. Even though, if you do live in a place where anything would be stolen from your porch or your front yard in a second, you still know, even in that circumstance, that it's probably less than 1% of the people who actually do this. These are repeat offenders, people who drive around and steal from people, whether it's porch pirates, car thieves, or whatnot. Always people who steal a dozen, 100 cars, or are constantly stealing from other people. Most people who steal once or twice, it's just like a teenage thing somebody does when they're dumb. Like one time I found an unlocked car where some teenagers were down at the train bridge, and I opened it up and I saw some CDs, and I grabbed a few cassette tapes, and it was before CDs actually, and ran down the tracks back home. Felt so stupid later. It's like, why did I steal from some dude? That could have been my car. Because as a human, I learned my lesson. I felt guilty. I wanted to take him back. I figured I'd get my ass kicked. But I care about other people's needs, and I realize that most people do. And I guess what I'm saying is that we all have bias, and it's natural. But the internet allows us to be so biased towards other people that we can assume that most people feel the way that the very few do on the internet. The very few loud ones. The ones who make the most noise usually have the least to say and the least to add. You know, the ones who claim to be patriots are usually some of the, often least patriotic, just like the extreme religious ones who want everybody out of their space and don't even follow their own belief systems. There's a lot of people who are totally full of shit, and they get the most attention, online especially. And this gives a very false version of the rest of the world and how people live their lives. I'll admit, even as a young kid, I remember, all we heard about, say, places like the South, right? Oh, Southerners, they're ignorant, right? Bad teeth. That kind of shit that people believe. Oh, the East Coast, they all have these attitudes. Well, for the most part, actually, a lot of East Coasters seem to have those attitudes, but not everybody. That's the point. A lot of Southerners, they've got strong accents, and there's a lack of education in many of these areas, but that was a stereotype that doesn't hold true, because you find that some of the wisest people aren't the ones that went to school or that had a very strong academic upbringing. The ones who grow up to understand the land are often the smartest ones, and that's another story altogether. But I had this discussion with somebody from Kentucky or somewhere, Louisiana, I don't know. It was a long time ago, and I must have said something about people from the South, and this was like over a decade ago, but I'll never forget the comment. It was like, it's easy to stereotype if we've never been there or know people, but since then I've completely changed my viewpoint on that. It was ignorant of me. Like, I had a very ignorant view of people, think of like what most Americans thought Iraq looked like before the U.S. invaded. I even had a friend admit to me once that he thought it was just dirt roads. He really didn't even realize they had paved roads. And they have whole cities. I mean, it's like Iran. People feel the same way. Oh, it's just a desert. No, they have a lot of progress if it hadn't been bombed into oblivion during the original Desert Storm, which don't even want to get into that, the warring aspect, but it's important to realize this same problem arises when we discuss the nature of man as far as judging people who go to war. I was thinking about this. There seem to be a lot of shitty people out there who do horrible things. But you look closer and you find they're not shitty people. They just did horrible things. The things that soldiers will do to innocents when they're in battle is stuff you don't even want to hear about. And most people don't hear about. It's not something that's just from the movies. My father told my mom about him having to mow down a village of women and children. This is something that happened in Vietnam. It's something that happened in Iraq. It happened in Afghanistan. These things happen all the time. It's happening right now as we speak. Innocents are being killed in Gaza. So this is an ongoing thing with humans. And to look at that, we think humans are monsters. But you don't understand the fog of war because we're not there. And this is where things get a little messy. Each one of us believes that we know what we would do in a specific situation. It's kind of, even if you take something as mundane as looking out your window and seeing a monster, right? And you think, oh, that would be scary. I'd see a monster. Oh, what would you do? Oh, I'd shoot it, or I'd run, or I'd hide. Have you ever been sitting in your room in the dark and really, really, really imagined that you saw something? To try to put yourself in that, even something, a zombie, whatever it might be, something cheesy. You can scare the shit out of yourself when you realize that you don't know how you would really react. Just like if a criminal broke into your house. Everyone, I'd grab my gun and shoot him, but a lot of people would freeze. We don't know what we would do. So, we make a lot of assumptions about who we would be in certain situations. And honestly, don't know where I was going with that. I'll be honest. I had a point that I was going to make, and it seems like that was completely out of league with the rest of the discussion, but I promise you it did have a point. Anyhow, judging each other is something that we will do naturally, but assuming that we have bad intentions is usually going to get us in trouble. Now it can protect us too. I am suspicious of people, and circumstance of mine was I was ripped off by a couple of different friends that I was letting stay with me multiple times. Even after forgiving someone, they stole from me again, and I stopped trusting people for a long time. Didn't want to make friends. I was just stayed away from people in general. And then I realized that was unhealthy for me. It made no sense. It was like, because something happened to me, I'm going to let that affect the rest of my life. No. I can't assume that others are dishonest just because I encountered some who were. But the impact encountering dishonest or violent or angry people can have on us, it can have a huge impact. Which is why people who are survivors of abuse may hate men in general. They just don't have the mindset for it to believe that there can be good guys because they were beaten so many times. And maybe by several different men. I mean, some people have I'm not going to call it always bad luck. Some people make bad choices, but let's just say everyone should feel safe in their own home without being physically or mentally abused. But that's often not the case. And that leads us to believe that all people are violent, and at least all men, according to some women, just like some men think that all women are gold diggers. There are some stereotypes that fit in different characteristics of men and women, but if you go by thinking that they fit everyone, it just doesn't go over very well. You won't be happy, and you have to basically take risks, is what I'm saying. You have to trust people. And if you forgot how to trust, you have to learn how to trust again. And that's my opinion on opinions. So thanks for listening. This has been Carpo on the 15-Minute Free Thinking Podcast, signing out. And I will see you next time, or hear from you next time. Bye now.